Buddy, we are back for another edition of the Ad Podcast, and today we have a special edition of the show for you. You guys might be familiar with this format in previous times that we've done it, but we are bringing on a provider, a service provider, and a potential partner for you guys all to learn about in the sales development ecosystem. As you guys know, as a chief revenue officer, I am very interested in sales agencies, sales SaaS, things that support the profession of sales. And as I've mentioned in the past as well, as a CRO, even with a small title at smaller organizations, I get inundated with probably about 10 requests a day that either come through one of my multiple client emails and or LinkedIn that promise me the amazing gift of filling my calendar full of appointments and just stacking my pipeline full of, awesome new deals and new opportunities. And as a CRO, I absolutely welcome those opportunities and that type of outreach. But because we get so many of it in the sales profession, it is oftentimes sometimes hard for us to discern between those who are offering something of value and those that are maybe offering a less interesting service. So what I have promised my audience is that as those requests come into me, I will always invite those service providers onto the show to learn a little bit more about them and to actually have them showcase their tool and solution to you guys as the viewers live. And then I've offered myself up as an experiment, as a guinea pig, to go through the process with them and have them apply their tool or their methodology to my ecosystem of clients and my personal brand. So you guys might remember Gabe Lullo, the CEO of Alley-Oop, who joined us a few weeks ago on the podcast. What I was super excited about is the outreach that came into me was actually not through a email. It was not through a LinkedIn post. It was actually a phone call. And believe it or not, I maybe shouldn't mention this, but I return all my missed calls to make sure that they weren't important. Oftentimes it's from, spammers that are calling me for personal reasons, or occasionally those that are calling me for professional things. But, I always call back because I want to at least give people a chance. And their SDR got on the line with me, walked me through a very coherent, added value, pleasant sales experience in a returned phone call that he knew who I was the minute he picked up the phone. It didn't sound like some auto dialer in India where, they picked up the phone and they didn't know me. They knew nothing about me. He picked up the phone. He was prepared. He was ready. And he walked me through their offering. It sounded interesting. I gave him, my standard pitch that I tell all service providers that are coming inbound to me about my challenge to, review their product and pipeline on the podcast. And he told me he would get me in touch with a partner manager. He followed up. I had a call with her. Then I ended up talking to Gabe. And then we had a really exciting podcast a few weeks ago. What I didn't realize when I walked Gabe and his team through this process is that they're actually one of the top 5 sales dev companies out there in the marketplace. So you're not talking to some mom and pop shop that's, sending emails out and trying to get their first handful of clients. Gabe and his team work with some of the brightest sales organizations in the world, including a shared client of mine. They work with Adobe. They work with ZoomInfo. They have built and scaled sales teams from their SDR support service for many, many organizations. And I am actually quite honored to have had a really fun conversation with Gabe just on the mechanics of sales and what they do and just the culture of sales and how AI is changing the game and their perspective and the idea of how the phone really does still work. And then Nicole Wasilnik is also joining us, who is the COO over at Alley-Oop, and she's also going to join us today to walk me through their onboarding process. So Gabe and Nicole, welcome to the show. Sorry for the droning introduction, but I think it's important to set the stage for the audience. And thanks again for spending some time with us today.
No, thank you. And I mean, like we said on the last podcast, you're our best sales pitch. I mean, the fact that, the fact that our team, we always say we're the product of the product, right? Our favorite intro to any of our demos is this: hey, if your SDRs that called me are as good as the one that are going to be calling for me, I'm interested. So we always love hearing that, and it's usually the biggest selling point for us. We appreciate that, and thanks for that authentic and very raw and honest testimonial.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Nicole and I are going to tag team this. We're really pumped about it. When we look at the onboarding process, just for kind of laying the land here, we take 3 weeks to do a typical campaign design. And there's certain things that we need from our clients. We're going to be asking Dylan on this call today live. He doesn't know these questions. He has no preparation. So we're going to do it very organically. Nicole's going to take them through essentially our questionnaire. And that questionnaire gives us all the things that we need to deliver 2 big things in this 3-week onboarding process. And that is the prospecting playbook design, which we use as a training manual. We use it as an actual execution plan. So that would be exactly what emails are we going to send out? What are the LinkedIn DMs going to look like? What are the objection handling guides and actual responses to questions that come our way, all on the client's brand? So in this case would be Dylan's, right? And so we're going to build out that playbook and then get his green light in 3 weeks when we're done with this. And then we're going to go to market with it, right? So we're going to use the actual playbook as a training guide for our SDRs who'll be assigned to his campaign. It's also going to be a management tool for their sales development managers who are going to be managing those SDRs. And it's also going to be a playbook for our campaign manager, campaign director, who will be our point of contact to Dylan to let him know, hey, this is what's happening, good, bad, and ugly. Because, we're always pivoting. We're doing A/B testing. We're determining what specifically is working, what's not working. A lot of campaigns we build, it's the first time this company ever went to market. And we're going to learn a lot. We're going to hear, what phone call is actually the best way for us to connect with your prospects, because we have really high connection rates to your ICP and your persona. We're going to probably double down on that. What we're seeing, LinkedIn is really where things are resonating. We're going to double down there. So we really like to, build the plane while we're flying, even though we use this playbook as a way to take off. But then at that point, we start always tweaking, pivoting, and switching up or testing things to make sure we're getting better and bigger results each and every single month. Does that make sense?
Totally. No, I love it. So thank you for walking us through the campaign setup process. And I love that, it's that idea of, you're really diving deep with the client, and this isn't a one size fits all situation. This isn't the first time and the only time we're going to talk about this. It's going to be a living, breathing, evolving strategy. So I'm really excited to get into the details. So.
Awesome. And the second and last piece that we take away from this process is data, right? A lot of people say the list is a strategy. My buddy Ryan says that all the time. Contact information is where this all starts. Total addressable market, ICP. There's a lot of terms that it's being used to discuss essentially the list, right? That's the most simplest way to say it. And so we want to know how big that list is. We want to know how accurate that list is. We want to know what ways we can use the list in regards to channels, whether it's email, phone, or what have you. So we do like to architect the size and scope of the campaign based on essentially the building blocks we have, which is that list. And we use various data partners. You mentioned one of them, ZoomInfo, and others, to really aggregate what that data set looks like. And there's a lot of questions we have to ask you to make sure we're calling and reaching out and contacting the people you want us to. So we're gonna ask a bunch of questions to get, again, that playbook design constructed, which is all our messaging and our guides and scripts. And then, of course, the data sample, which we also show you too. So we're going to show you, hey, this is what we've come up with. This is what your data looks like. This is the total addressable market. You green light, yes, yes, yes. This is what I want us to go after. And then we start going after those specific accounts and contacts. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds perfect.
Cool. So I'm going to turn it over to Nicole, who's going to start asking you some questions.
All right, let's do it. What's up, Nicole?
Awesome. All right. No, really excited to dive in and to walk you through the layout. The first thing I want to, get an understanding of is, what you're looking for out of this campaign, right? What is success? what are the outcomes that we're looking for so that our team can start to benchmark around that. Second part of this, I'm going to walk you through, of course, the logistics, your team who will be taking our leads and what that will look like. I'm going to ask questions that are going to go through your value proposition so that we can build out the messaging. And then, like Gabe said, we'll go into the data side, and then that'll be the first phase of our onboarding to get over a playbook to your team.
Let's go.
So with that, I guess my first question would be, what does success look like for you in a campaign like this?
Yeah, great question. So what Gabe and I discussed of the, so to give a little bit of a context on, who I am in my day job outside of the podcast host that you guys may or may not always know. So I'm a fractional chief revenue officer out there working right now for 4 different entities. So then I've got the podcast, which essentially serves as the marketing arm of my fractional chief revenue officer business, but it also serves as a way for me to get into the room and talk to interesting people on behalf of my clients. So as a podcast owner and as a brand, Gabe and Nicole have thought that one of the most exciting things that they can do to support my business is to drive funnel at the top of my marketing funnel, which is the podcast. So they're actually going to be reaching out to the C-suite and booking potential guests for the podcast. I'll talk a little bit about how I've done that in the past. I've done spray and pray and shooting with a sniper rifle, a little bit of what we talked about before, Gabe. So sometimes I just load up a pretty basic outreach email like, hey, how's it going? Would love to have you on the podcast. I've interviewed past people like Keith Kroc, the chairman of Ariba, or, Beyonce's dad, or Neil Patel, the head of Patel Digital. Here's a link to the show if you want to check out past guests. Would love to have you on for the pod sometime. And quite frankly, instead of going out and being very selective of who I'm looking to interview, I will just hit every C-suite title in my database and just see who bubbles up to the top. It's been very effective. In the past, I've booked the show out 3-4 months in advance in doing that. And then I'll slowly cycle through all the guests and then kind of get up to current. In recent times, the podcast has basically kind of booked itself based on inbound pitches from PR firms, based on people reaching out over, DMs or social and saying that they want to be on the show. People that I meet organically at events and businesses, I invite them to come on. So in more recent times, I've been fairly successful in keeping the show booked just organically, sometimes through social selling, going on LinkedIn and commenting on people's notes that are in my DM. So I've been able to keep the show booked without too much of a gap, just organically, I would say maybe over the last 2 or 3 months. Now, in sales or in the influencer marketing world that I operate in, a lot of times, just because people are coming to me and want to be on the show, that doesn't mean they're the best people for the show. So while I do like the idea that it has been organically been able to kind of sustain itself without me being too much of a engine behind it, I have great conversations. I enjoy the ones that I have, but I would not say that the guests are always the absolute most strategic guests for cross-pollinating my list of business. And probably the secondary goal there would be to grow the show. So getting guests that have audiences that can then expand the show. So probably the longest answer ever to what does success look like. But I would say success looks like me at my top priority, getting great C-level guests that cross-pollinate my 4 existing accounts in my fractional CRO business. And then I'd say the secondary goal would be to get the biggest possible, coolest possible, most socially engaged and largest audience guests that would grow the overall audience of the show. So do you want me to walk you through the 4 clients and the verticals that are most interesting to me? Would we talk about that now?
Yeah, we can pivot to there, and then I'll continue to ask questions because I think I'll gather a lot of information out of that to start, and then what I don't have, we can fill in the gaps.
Perfect. So I'll walk you through my current portfolio of 4 fractional C-level consultant clients. So the first is a company called Squad. They're a micro influencer company that builds squads of influencers around either another influencer, a brand, an event, or a publisher. So it's a micro influencer play tethered to larger social followings in which we can recruit from. So I'll try and keep the tee-ups very high level for today. My primary remit for them is talent agencies and talent managers. So I would like to interview for the podcast C-level from talent agencies and talent managers, everybody up from CAA down to the mom and pop manager that has 10 influencers on their roster. From my research, I've identified 8,500 talent agencies or managers. There's probably even more, but would love to interview as many of those as possible.
Okay.
The secondary vertical within that client is I just took on the responsibility of our publishing arm. And what I mean by publishing arm is we've been most successful in promoting book launches. So they want me to go after that vertical as an exclusive area. So would love to talk to C-suite, especially CMOs within publishing companies, both big and small, but mainly in the, I'd say, primarily nonfiction, and then fiction would be like a secondary priority. So that's the Squad side. The next company that I work with is a company called Channel Factory. It's where I started my digital media and influencer marketing and branded content sales career over 13 years ago. Tony Chen, the CEO that I started working for when he was 19 years old in an apartment building, they're now the world's largest buyer of YouTube advertising, $1.5 billion a year in ads. Tony brought me back in to launch a self-serve media buying platform called Creators Buddy, which allows YouTubers to generate views to videos that are important to them, especially the ones that are branded that might need to hit a minimum CPV in order to be successful, build their own subscriber base. And then if they have businesses that are, their own direct-to-consumer businesses, whether that's merch or classes or, protein powder, we can take their name and likeness, promote them in advertising on YouTube, and then drive conversions. So my primary current ICP for that business is talking to influencer agencies. So not the side that we were talking about before with Squad, which are talent agencies and talent managers, C-suite. This is more of the traditional agency that goes out and does the brand work, and they're not as involved in the representation side, although sometimes they are open up. So C-suite of any company that is primarily an influencer agency or has influencer marketing capabilities. So that would be for Channel Factory. The third client is called Lucy Hub. And Lucy Hub is an AI video editing tool. So this is a little bit harder, and maybe you guys will be helpful in helping me kind of break this down. But my problem with Lucy Hub is that almost everyone is doing video marketing these days. So almost everyone is our customer or is a potential customer. And, that is never a good strategy. They've had really great success in corporate communications. They've had really great success in learning and development. But I would say the primary people who Lucy Hub brought me on to speak to was video agencies. So creative agencies, production companies, people who are creating lots and lots of video content on behalf of their clients. And can Lucy Hub help them streamline their post-production process, get their overall cost per video down, and deliver videos faster? So I would say C-suite of companies that do video production, either from like an agency perspective or a production company perspective would be good for that. And then the final one is actually probably is very sexy and fun, and hopefully you guys will have as much fun with it as I have, is a company called Lost In. Lost In makes this beautiful guidebook here. Lost In, these are cult phenomenon travel guidebooks to different cities in America and the world. They've got probably 650 of these titles. What's really cool about this is, yes, there's a physical product. And most of the things that I deal with, there generally isn't, but there is a physical product. Lost In is an acquisition by my good friend John Skogmo, who 2 years ago sold his company Jukin Media for $150 million, public knowledge. He sat on the sidelines for a little bit, waited for the economy to do what it was going to do. And now he's deploying capital alongside a bunch of other really smart investors to take the model that they built at Jukin and apply to the travel industry. So what Jukin did is they would find a viral video, they would buy it from the owner or license it, and then they would build their own media properties to accelerate the virality of that clip. So they built 3 media properties, one called Pet Collective, one called People Are Awesome, one called Fail Army. They had 150 million concurrent social followers. So they would go find a viral video, get the rights to it, and then launch it through a cannon of 150 million followers to like supercharge it. That would generate ad revenue. It would make the video go even more viral. Then the television companies would call up and be like, oh, you guys own that viral video. We want to license it for, TMZ or the news or, the show on MTV where they show funny people falling off, chairs and things like that. Yep. So it became this licensing business. Then they got so good at the licensing piece that they actually started producing those types of shows for television. And then they also started licensing those clips to brands so they could create videos that had viral moments in them so it became a very, very successful company. So John has basically acquired this company. He acquired Bring Me from BuzzFeed. He acquired Travelgram, and he acquired a really cool 4 million follower Facebook travel community that they're rebranding as Lost in Travel, the Lost in Travel Facebook community. So we have a combined following of 10 million followers across our social properties that we own. We own the hard asset of Lost In. We own an influencer network of travel influencers that have signed up and joined us to be on our journey. So who do I want to talk to? In the next 5 weeks, I want to talk to C-suite of companies that are based in Venice, California, because we have a book coming up that is for Venice. And we would love to get any brands that want to be part of that Venice story telling that have either roots in Venice, a location in Venice. So that's for the next 5 weeks. Beyond that, I want to talk to the C-suite of travel and luxury brands. So think of high-end hotels, watch companies, high fashion, things that are associated with that, what we call the economy plus traveler. So we're not, we're not Rob Report. We are not AAA. We are Lost In is what we call the economy plus traveler. So this is the traveler that generally sits somewhere in the middle of the plane, not in the front, not in the back. They will pay extra money for exclusivity. They will pay extra money for a unique experience, and they probably travel on average 3 to 5 times a year on a major trip. So think about your millennials that are, constantly made fun of because they like experiences more than things. That's our bread and butter. So so any brand who would want to be associated with the Lost in Travel lifestyle and ecosystem, they would be great people for me to interview as well. And then so those are my four current properties and kind of the ICPs. And then, the final, secondary KPI would be growth. So then it's just the biggest, coolest people you can find that will get the show like additional reach. Like, I'll tell you, the top 3 shows on the podcast are Sean Duras, who is a famous YouTuber with 5 million subscribers. He owns an esports team. He owns a talent agency, and he's invested $33 million into startups. He probably gets a lot of views because he's already a famous influencer, right? So a lot of people find that show because they're probably looking for Sean and other ecosystems. The second most watched episode is Dr. Travis Bradbury, who wrote the books Emotional Intelligence 2.0 and a few others, but that was his most recent one. And he also holds the record for the world's most watched video on LinkedIn with 3.8 million views. So I think same thing, Travis just has a high search volume or whatever it is. My show indexed well, and it way outperforms the average. And then the third is probably Keith Kroc, the former founder of DocuSign, former Undersecretary of State under Mike Pompeo. Again, big guys who have high profiles and probably high search volume. So yeah, so anytime I can, the more prolific and the bigger the guest, either from doesn't always have to be like Keith is not very followed in social media, but I think he's just a big name. But those other two have I think the kind of the SEO velocity and the social media velocity to where their names just generate a lot of referral traffic. So I want to keep on with that, that idea of every once in a while just having a hitter that helps the show grow because the person is very prolific. So sorry for the long intro, but that's what success would look like, is getting those types of guests for the show.
That was really helpful. And thank you so much for taking me through those 4 different components. So, and where we would want to focus. And then of course, the last part. So walking through and one by one, and, on the show, if we have time, maybe we can go through 2 of them and take the rest offline. But looking at, for example, Squad Micro, what is in your ideal world, a 2-minute elevator pitch, the main value proposition that you would want to get across to somebody that we've, gotten on the phone or caught their attention. And then I can go through a few more questions based on that.
Yeah, I love that. So I can give you those elevator pitches. We should probably talk about this on whether we want to actually, frame up why we're inviting the guest on the show. Whether we want them to know that I am essentially having them onto the show because I want to form a relationship, for a later sales conversation. And the reality is I've actually been pretty good about not, I get somebody on the show and I don't immediately go for the jugular and be like, hey, by the way, thanks for coming on the show. Here's a sales pitch. Most of the time I just kind of collect these relationships as folks that I can potentially talk to at some point along the way. But I think I do want to start getting a little bit more specific about the idea that, I want to do business with them in addition to have them on the show. I think maybe that transparency would maybe front end qualify a little bit more the interest level, and then back end, have them not be, have me feel comfortable sending them an immediate follow-up about the business opportunity. So let's do that, since I think that will actually be a little bit harder for you guys to recruit people if we do that on the front end. It won't be like shooting fish in a barrel, because I think it's really, I've found very easy to get people on the podcast, even though they're becoming more and more ubiquitous. People love hopping on shows and talking about themselves. So so Squad is a micro nano influencer company that essentially takes a larger. So we operate under the principle that 67% of millennial and Gen Alpha want to be a content creator. Well, if you look at any social following, whether that's a brand, a publisher, a event, or a property, if you analyze that brand's followers and you analyze a larger influencer's followers, 7% of those accounts are turned on as creator. So our value proposition to the brand is, why would you ever work with micro-influencers without first looking at your own followers and your own engagers? Because there's such a plethora of those people who already like you, already follow you, already engage with you. And a lot of these other UGC platforms and micro-influencer platforms are using some other data point that doesn't tie into brand affinity. So that's where we start. And the reason that I have to talk to talent agencies is because we need those larger influencers in order to make those campaigns work. Not only does it help us find that Venn diagram of the overlap of the brand and the celebrity, but it allows us to have a more sticky recruiting message. Because if I reach out from, a platform that someone hasn't heard of, there's about a 15% chance that they'll opt in. If I reach out on behalf of a brand, it goes up to about 45%. But if I can say, hey, it's Casey Neistat, celebrity that you know, we're working with Adobe and we'd love for you to participate in that campaign, my recruitment threshold goes up to about 95%. So that's why we're called Squad. Channel Factory. The big elevator pitch for Channel Factory and for the product that I work on, which is Creators Buddy, is why in this current time that we find ourselves on YouTube, if you go on YouTube, 99% of the commercials are the same commercials you would have seen on TV before YouTube became a thing. And you have millions and millions of YouTube celebrities that are on this platform creating content that powers the ecosystem. So why on earth would you not leverage these celebrities and create ads that feature the people who made the platform famous and why everybody is coming to the platform? Brands are lazy. They're using their old methodology, which is just interrupt people with TV ads, and they're not leveraging the YouTube celebrities in their paid media strategy the way that they could and have just off the charts performance. So my job is to every day evangelize to the brands on why they need to be doing that. So that's kind of the main value prop, is that if you leverage the celebrities that make the platform work, your ads will perform a lot better than the stuff that you're creating for TV.
Yep. Okay.
Lucy Hub is a pretty simple value proposition. It's a cloud-based platform that allows you to, instead of hiring a production company, you pop this open and you film on your camera. And as that content is uploaded, as you upload it to a cloud, it immediately hits the desk of editors that are around the world, and they immediately start working on your string out. And what it provides is a lower cost per minute, a lower cost per video, and a faster, almost instantaneous turnaround time to your videos. Lost In. There's a lot of places you can go to reach travelers, but Lost In is a very specific place that you can go to find that economy plus traveler. The traveler that is deeply obsessed with exploring cities, does it more than the average, has more disposable income than the average travel shopper. And most importantly, the assets that we have built, Bring Me, Travelgram, Lost In, and our Facebook community, that 10 million follower strong army of folks that are looking for us to curate the next great experience for them to check out and travel. Brands can not only be an advertiser, but they can actually add value to that ecosystem. So we're looking for brands that want to reach that economy plus traveler and do it in a way that's authentic to our audience. So those are the 4 value props, I suppose.
Okay, that's really helpful. So one of the things that you said at the beginning of the show here was that, when you're bringing people on, you've done a great job with, getting them through inbound different channels, but really finding the best fit for your show and your podcast. So when we have somebody who's, on the phone with us, they're engaged in the conversation, they understand our value proposition, what is a, 1 or 2 qualifying questions that we can be asking to this person to really ensure that they are the best fit for your show and to book them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would ask them, if they could share one or up to 3 past podcast shows that they've done that they really love and feel like they did a great job of evangelizing what they do or representing their brand. So I think past indicators are the greatest predictor of future success. So so here's something that is interesting about my show. I don't have canned questions. I do deep research on every single guest. I absorb every article, every podcast, and every video that I can find on page 1 of Google in order to come up with my 10 to 20 questions. For certain guests, that is very easy. For certain guests, that is actually impossible to find. And I sometimes end up having to cancel on them if they can't feed me 10 questions on their own that would make for an interesting show. So I don't mind being, the guinea pig or the first time that somebody has done a show, as long as there's enough source material to come up with those 10 to 20 questions. So a great qualifier, even before you even get on the phone with somebody, or whether you even reach out to somebody, is if you do a quick Google search, have they do a few shows appear in which they've been guests, do a few articles appear in which they have given point of view or context or stories about them and their lives and their career, do a few YouTube videos exist. That was why Gabe was so easy. Gabe had lots of source material and lots of pre-existing things that I could digest. And, an interview with John Barrows, who's been on my show, is somebody that I really respect from the industry. And they had probably one of the best John Barrows shows that I've seen, I think, was Gabe. So, that type of source material is a great qualifier. That's pre-call. And then I think post-call would be, I think another component would be, hey, would you be willing to commit before you come on the show? Will you commit to reposting it in a timely manner, engaging with it with at least one comment? Would you consider sending it out to your newsletter? Would you consider getting your corporate team to support it? Gabe's episode performed really well because it had the most reshares of any episode as well, because I'm sure he put it on Slack somewhere internally and he unleashed the army, to support it. So those types of additional levers in which the guests can support the show are not a deal breaker for me, but it makes it much more of an equal value exchange, I would say.
Absolutely. No, that's really helpful. And that helps take us through, the pain points, the value proposition, and what we can do on our end to be setting you up for the most success.
Yep.
And I would say one of the last questions, because I know we've talked through a lot of my questions here, is, when somebody today says no to you, why are they saying no? Why are they not interested in doing that? And what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's not often, I'd probably say I get more people that just don't respond. And that's also a version of no. So, but the people who engage, generally a few different things happen. One is they set up a interview and then they no-show for, actually people don't often no-show for a podcast, maybe once ever, but they set up they set up an interview, but then they either kick the can on it. They don't completely no-show, but they either reschedule or cancel. And I can't say exactly why I think they do that. I think they maybe just, maybe it's a value proposition thing or a use of time. I think there is a component of nervousness, right? I think that there are some people that are just like, they've never done it. They're not super comfortable with it and they're not prepared. So they kind of like, just keep rescheduling, knowing that, if they avoid it, they won't have to do the thing that they're, having anxiety around. I think other people just see it like, well, if it didn't cost me anything, why is there value there? Right. So I'm not charging these guests. I'm not doing anything except offering them a platform and the opportunity to practice their communication skills and platform their personal brand or their company. To most people, that's pretty interesting, but I think occasionally people, you know, maybe because I'm not Joe Rogan or somebody that is a household name, they, you know, deprioritize it. I think, so yeah, so I think the fear component is a part of it. I think the anxiety and fear of, you know, actually showing up and doing a good job and all those things, definitely there's a scale depending on the guest. And that's where I think, again, past performance is an indicator of future success. If they've successfully done podcasts and I'm not the first time they're doing it. And then I think the other component is just making sure that, you know, the bigger they are, the more that I probably am on the lower end of the priority spectrum based on the other opportunities that they have to do on PR. And, you know, once in a while I'll do a pre-call and I'll work with the PR team and kind of, you know, talk to them about what's in it for them from like a, you know, how big is the show and all those things. So, you know, like I'm not the biggest show. I've got 30,000 followers on LinkedIn, which isn't bad for a LinkedIn show. But again, it's very targeted and tailored to this marketing, advertising, creator economy, sales is a big part of it, you know, founders, et cetera, but it's not the biggest show on the planet. So
Right.
there is a qualification filter, I would imagine, for some folks to where it's like, okay, well, you know, I'm too big for this or whatever. So I think those are the three things.
Okay. So all this has been really helpful. It allows my team to say, okay, we now have your value proposition. We can build out a playbook, the phone scripts, the email cadence, what runs behind the rep, and then of course build out our list that we're going to go after and target and qualify. Now, something that you just mentioned at the end there is that pre-call. Is that something that you would like our team to be setting up? So we get somebody who says, yes, they would be interested. They would love to be on the show. Do you want us to take that next step to set up a pre-call with you and them to truly verify and go through different questions there, or just go straight for setting up the podcast?
I would say I will give you both as tools. So if you can get them straight to a show, that's actually a better situation for me because I actually do like, I like the spontaneity of showing up and meeting somebody for the first time on the show because it allows me to kind of, you know, use my curiosity as a way to propel the show forward. I think that I oftentimes become somewhat informed on a person, and you even do create a bit of chemistry just by watching their videos and listening to their old shows. So there is a bit of familiarity that happens, but I think the pre-call is just an unnecessary step, but a lot of guests want it. A lot of guests want it because they want to know, who the hell am I? What are we going to talk about? You know, like I don't know. I don't have an exact percentage, but I would say at least 25% of guests do want a pre-call. So I always make myself available for them. So use that as an additional quiver in your arsenal, that if they are somewhat unsure about booking, you could always say, well, let's do a pre-call with Dylan and see if the chemistry is there, or we could let us answer questions about the show, or let us walk you through the analytics of the audience to make sure it's a good fit for you, whatever their hesitation may or may not be. But a lot of times it's just, they want to get to know me for a second and make sure that they're not showing up to some weird thing.
That's very fair. All right. Well, those take me through my questions. Any last minute questions for myself that I could help?
No, I mean, you know, you guys do a great job in, you know, in gathering the intelligence and the stuff that you need. I think these were very, you know, informative questions for me to think about. I think I worked through a lot of my own issues. Just
therapeutic,
like a sales therapist call. So I've got some takeaways on my end, even just in my own process, that I need to, you know, not just think about and noodle on, but probably also layer on some implementation. So, you know, some onboarding processes are absolute garbage and they're painful, and all I want to do is get off them as fast as possible. But I found this onboarding process to not only be insightful and engaging, but I feel like I got value just from the onboarding process. So thanks again for that.
Absolutely. Thank you. And just for the audience, so want you guys to kind of hear what next steps would then be.
Mhm.
So we're going to send you essentially a pod, and this is similar to like a Google collaboration platform, and it's really, really great. It has 4 different tabs on it, but it's going to give you all the information that we just aggregated in their questionnaire. We're going to populate it in there so you can see all the answers you just gave us. So we're going to fill it out for you, but it's also there for you to fill out or add anything or edit anything
Cool.
for that, and that's the questionnaire. The second, which is still pending, is the playbook design itself. Once we're done with that, we will put it there. You'll be notified and you can go through that red line and you can comment on that pod and that playbook all within the system. And then the last thing is the data sample. So we'll take that ICP that we just discussed and we'll show you a data sample of a contacts and accounts. And you can go through those and provide commentary. And then once those are both approved, then we'll train the team and assign the team members to the campaign and go live.
Wow. Well, I'm excited. So I know we have another podcast in the books, which is what I call like the results podcast, where we can actually check in a few months and I can go back to the audience and say, hey, not only did Aliu, reach out and be willing to be a guinea pig in my laboratory, but here's what happened. And I think that's going to be really powerful for the audience to see. But I also think there could be some value in the review of the next phase of collateral, whether that's the pod or the playbook. So would you guys want to do another touch point to walk through those materials, or would you want to keep on our current schedule, which is just show the results at the end of the campaign?
Yeah, I mean, we're open to both. I think
Okay.
it'd be awesome to kind of talk about what the results were from essentially this
Yeah.
conversation, and then a results call from essentially the campaign execution at that point.
No, I agree. I think the more that we can be transparent and show the audience the various deliverables and give them as close to a real experience without giving away all of the secret sauce, because we are doing it in a live audience where anybody can access the show, including your competitor set. So I want to be responsible. I want to be respectful of your proprietary IP and your process, while at the same time giving as much value to the audience. So if you guys are on board for that, let's definitely do 2 more touch points, one to walk through the deliverables and the final green light, and then the final results reveal as well.
Yeah, and one thing we're going to add, which my takeaway, because I, of course, was on the show already, is I think one of your value adds compared to most podcasts that are out there is that this is live, and so when we share that in our way of prospecting to get guests on, I think that's one of the biggest things that we can share is, hey, listen, turnaround time, production, delays of podcasts is, being backed up is just kind of a nature of the beast with most podcasts. In your world, that's exactly the opposite. It goes live and it's there and it's authentic and it's really cool, and it gets your guests, exposing relevant information without having to be kind of timing it out, so they can talk about things that are happening in their world now, and the audience sees that. So I think that's a huge value add that we can add into our prospecting for you.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think, I've shared with you that I oftentimes don't even tell the guests that it's live, and it's only ever, mainly it's not because I'm being nefarious, but I just don't want to freak them out. And when it's just straight to live, and then, I immediately go on to LinkedIn and tag them, they're like, oh my gosh, it's like, it's done. And nobody ever complains, except one instance where the PR person called me back, was like, oh my gosh, they said something that's not ready to be said. We have to take it down. So I took it down. I edited that one little part, but then I reposted it as a live stream. So I think, you guys have exposed a couple of things in my process that I think was really helpful today, from the perspective of what the podcast is. Yes, want to build an audience. I love my network being to follow along on my professional journey and learn from me if they feel like they are, which is awesome. But it's also a tool. It is a way for me to build my personal brand, but it's also a way for me to build relationships with potential customers for my portfolio of clients. So I think 2 takeaways that I love about you guys is transparency wins the day. I'm going to be more transparent with potential guests in the future, saying, yes, I want to have you on the show because I want to get to know you and I want us to do business together. That's why we're doing this. And I think
Yeah.
I like that because it sets expectations and it doesn't, but I don't think it's, too pushy. And I think it's why most podcasts exist, is for the founders to build relationships. But I want to be a little bit more overt in that, especially leveraging you guys and your expertise. And I think it'll give you guys a little bit more, not pushback, but maybe a little bit more challenge to, if we're being transparent there. And then, yeah, maybe just be transparent with the idea that it's a live stream. Maybe a few people will freak out and not come on, but I think you're right. There's a lot of things that I can lean into that are actually value add of the live stream, which is, more relevancy, immediate gratification that you're not going to have to wait around for an edit. The production value is what it is. It has a lot of positive benefits if you can get around get through the idea that, yep, you're going live and everything you say is going to be out there. And, my audience also knows that if you say something that is an absolute deal breaker, I will always take down the episode and re-edit for you. If that's absolute, that's always a fail safe for any guest that does get freaked out about the idea of live. So thanks for commenting on that. And I love that insight.
Nice. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And we're looking forward to getting to work.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Nicole. Congratulations. I hear you're going out on some leave soon. So
yeah. I got a text reminder this morning, 25 days. So
let's go. You'll be in our thoughts, and we'll look forward to talking to you when you're back in the office. But yeah, meantime, Gabe and Nicole, thanks so much for coming on. Anything else you guys would want to promote or point people towards? If people are already getting interested in the idea of what Alley does, how can they get in touch and learn more?
Yeah, we're both very active on LinkedIn. I post almost daily, and so does Nicole. So if you have any questions for us individually, for the company, just send us a quick note on LinkedIn and we'll respond accordingly.
Beautiful. All right. For all of you who are following along at home, at wherever you're watching or listening to the podcast, don't forget to follow or subscribe. If you leave a review, that is how we find a more organic audience. And most importantly, if you have a sales leader or a marketing leader, even somewhere in your organization, who would benefit from the conversation that I had with Gabe and Nicole today, if they potentially are in market for a service provider that helps outsource the SDR function and isn't afraid to pick up the almighty telephone, don't forget to share this episode with your colleague. That's it for this week, and we will look forward to seeing you guys for part 3 of the Alley-Oop series in